And Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Virtual House Church. Sorry, got off about a minute or two late here today, and actually it started off with the wrong screen. Also, I had that still set up from the show I did with Zen on our Quest for Truth there, but I think I got everything working right today. And if this is your first time joining us at the Virtual House Church, you can go to virtualhousechurch.com. Virtualhousechurch.com is our primary website. Let me switch over here. There you go. So that's the website, virtualhousechurch.com. And, of course, there's some introductory information there on the front page, some cool videos for you to check out, a little graphic here describing the 2 commandments, right? Yeshua said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. Well, those 2 summarize the 10, and the 10 summarize the 613. What's the 613? Well, at some point in history, some rabbi somewhere decided to count everywhere Yahuwah said to do this or don't do that in the Torah, and he came up with 613 times that he did so. And if you want to click on this graphic right here, it takes you to a really cool website that will explain each of the 613 and how they function. Also below that is a fellowship finder put out by 119 Ministries. Really cool. You can zoom in to any of these places here, click on one of these icons, and it'll give you the contact information of somebody that is living there that's doing the same thing we're doing here. And if you live in the United States, there's certainly a lot of them for you to choose from. So that if you live in the United States, chances are there's probably someone fairly close to you, maybe within driving distance, that you could fellowship with if you wanted to reach out and contact them. This is a great resource to help you do that. Some cool videos down below that Zach Bauer from New to Torah put out. He's another Hebrew scholar, if you will, that I highly recommend people check out. Go to his YouTube channel, New to Torah. Tons of good videos there. And here on the Virtual House Church website, I have a couple of links on the top left here. Who we are is just about Sheila and I, what we believe, our statement of faith. The Coming Out of Babylon link has a whole bunch of videos, including videos from Zach Bauer, from Steve Mutria, from 119 Ministries, from Jim Staley, and others on there, dealing with all sorts of stuff about what does it mean to come out of Babylon, and how do we keep the feasts, and what does it mean to keep Shabbat, and things of that nature. Lots of cool videos and books and other links and resources for you to check out on that page right there. This page is specifically made for newbies. So if you're new to all this, I would say start there. That's a good place for you to start. Right below that is the Virtual House Church store. And right at the top here, you see the calendar that was put out by Kevin and Amanda Roberts. They used to be our home Bible fellowship when they were still living here in Texas. They put this calendar together. You click on that, it takes you to a free PDF. And this is the way it's laid out for September, for this month on the Gregorian calendar. And it shows us that, at least according to this calendar, the Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, is Monday. So if you're wondering when to keep it, if you're going by this calendar, you'll keep it on Monday. I believe Juan Carlos kept Yom Kippur yesterday on his calendar, which you scroll down here and you can see his calendar. Same thing, click on that, takes you to a free PDF, and you could talk to him about understanding that better. And below that are the Torah study workbooks. And by the way, we only got one more portion for this year. That's during Sukkot. And then after Sukkot is over, we roll back the Torah scroll. If you have one, that's what they do traditionally. But symbolically, we will do the same thing. Symbolically, going back to Genesis and starting the Torah cycle all over again right after Sukkot. So, good time to get the workbooks. If you want to get them quicker, your best bet is to get them through Amazon, and you can get them as singular copies this way. If you want to save some money and get them all in a collection, you can get them through us. I am currently out of them right now, and I'm expecting a shipment in probably later this week. So if you've ordered something this week, you're on hold right now, and will be until I get them in myself. So again, you can get them quicker through Amazon, cheaper through me. If you want to get started with the PDFs, you can click on that and get an instant download, and then you can print them off for yourself, for your family, for your home group, or whatever. And another great resource that goes along with the Virtual House Church is the Ephraim Awakening DVD-ROM that contains all the stuff that you see right here. So those are some resources for you to check out, and then some links dealing with Paul and the book of Galatians. And below that are our weekly studies. And if you scroll all the way down to Deuteronomy week 53, this is the one we'll be doing today. Hopefully you guys did your homework, and the homework before coming on to our broadcast at 2 o'clock on Shabbat nowadays is to at least read the scripture references here in the right-hand column, and or watch the You can listen to the 2013 broadcast or the other broadcasts from 2016 and 17. I will tell you, this is an emotional portion for me. If you watch the 2016 broadcast, obviously you could tell I was extremely emotional at that time. My uncle was dying, and some people may be confused if you watch this video recently, because I saw comments on my YouTube page under that video. People thought this was current. No, this was 4 years ago, back in 2016, and he passed away shortly after doing this broadcast. I was actually at Sukkot when I got the phone call, and then I had to cut Sukkot short, fly back. I think I was in California at that time. Fly back for the funeral and all that. Very emotional time. And then 2017 was a really fun broadcast with Jake, and Juan Carlos joined us also for this broadcast, and I think Chad Schaefer was on there as well. So that was good stuff. So hopefully you had a chance to at least listen to one of these or watch the videos there. And of course, this is the broadcast that we're doing right now that will be archived there when we're done. And I highly recommend you guys check out these commentaries. Download them. Click on those PDFs and download them. It's written by a woman named Ardell from YourLivingWaters.com. She has some tremendous insights to all of the Torah portions that I've read with her so far. And highly recommend you check those out. The Chuck Missler video there. Again, the questions, these are in the workbooks and also on the website. These just help sort of get your mind going, and they're good conversation starters for if you've got a home group fellowship or something to do it together to get the conversation going. Then these were notes from this week's study. Taking some stuff here taken from this book by King Wells, Ancient Myths and the Bible, and some other stuff by Dr. Michael Heiser regarding the Divine Council. Whole bunch of videos here on that from I guess an interview Dr. Heiser did with Future Quake, Dr. Future there on his show, and some other stuff on that, and demons according to Jesus, according to various people there, tribulation plan, and of course the Psalm 91 video. So lots of cool stuff for you to check out for this week's study. If you want to continue it after we're done with the broadcast, certainly a lot there to keep you busy for the rest of the day. Now, let's go ahead and listen to the Parsha in 60 seconds. Parsha is the Hebrew word for study, and then we'll jump right into our commentary on it today.
Shalom and welcome to Parsha in 60 seconds. Today's portion is from Deuteronomy 32, 1 through 52. It is called Haazinu, which means listen. Moses asked that his speech be like rain and dew for the grass, and proclaims that God is perfect and his children are unworthy. Moses reminds the Israelites that God chose them as God's own people. God found the Israelites in the desert and watched over them like an eagle on his
I don't know why it always does this whenever I do it full screen.
nest. God would give the Israelites everything, and like spoiled children, they would abandon God for false gods and demons. So God would hide his face from them and bring judgment among them, but would not wipe them out. When other nations would come against Israel, thinking that their own might was causing Israel's judgment, God would rise up and avenge the servants of God. That day would be a great day of judgment and cleansing. Moses and Joshua recite all these words as a poem to the people. When Moses finished reciting, he told them to take his warning to heart and teach their children, for it was very serious and their very lives were at stake. Moses then climbs Mount Nebo to see the land of Canaan and die, because he had struck the rock to produce water in the wilderness of Zin, failing to uphold God's sanctity among the Israelite people. And that is Haazinu in 60 seconds.
All right, that is our portion distilled down to 60 seconds. Let me make sure we hit pause so it doesn't jump onto another video on us here. And it looks like today, right now, it's so far anyway, it's just going to be Juan Carlos and I. Jake Grant is doing that baptism thing that he talked about last week. He texted me, he said maybe if he's able to, he'll try to Skype in through his phone, and I'll kind of keep that, I'll kind of monitor that here. But in the meantime, Juan, welcome to the Virtual House Church with us once again, and excited to hear what you have to say about this week's study.
Shalom, Rob. Shalom, everybody. It's a blessing to be here. You know, Rob, finally we're getting to the end of the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy. And you know, I think this portion is so interesting because it's finally speaking about this famous song, the song of Moses. Mm-hmm. That I think is so relevant for all of us in these last days. You know, we were discussing about this last week, and how this song was received by Moshe as a witness against the people of Yahuwah. And you know, there are several witnesses in the scripture, And even the Ark of the Covenant was called the Ark of the Witnesses. So it is so relevant to understand what is the significance, the meaning of this song for all of us today. What was the significance, the meaning for Israel throughout the years? Because everything is contained over there in the song. But for us that we're living in these times, it's so important to read this song, to understand what is in there, because from my point of view, it's basically a really good summary of everything that we have been sharing in this virtual house, everything that is contained in the book of Deuteronomy. And it's important to understand what is the heart of Yahuwah in each one of the lines that Moses received in the song. One thing that caught my attention, and when I was reading this, that and actually I was sharing this with my dad, and he pointed this out to me, that this is a song that Moshe received from heaven. This is the song that was coming directly from Yahuwah. It's not a song that Moses created by himself. It's something he received as a witness directly from Yahuwah. And this is so amazing, because if this is something that was a revelation from Yahuwah in order to be a witness, we see the direct connection that is written in the book of the Apocalypse, Revelation. When we see this 144,000 in the chapter 15, that they're singing the song of Moses. And actually, I want to go there for a quick look. This is in the verse chapter 15 of Revelation.
Yeah. So, but before you go there,
verse 1,
because we talked about this in one of the previous broadcasts, because it does talk about it, the Song of Moses there in Revelation, but it's the way it's quoted there. It's not the same song that we have here. So we have a Song of Moses when they come out from the Exodus, which is a joyous song, and then we have this song of Deuteronomy 32, which is not a joyous song. This is pretty a bad song. And then you have the 144,000 singing the Song of Moses. So when we look at that, I'd like to get your commentary on what your thoughts are on in that regard.
In my regards, and actually you're absolutely right, Rob, because we see these two songs, as you said. I do believe that, somehow the song that is written and is referred to in the book of Revelation is this song that Moses received directly from Yahuwah. Mm-hmm. And what's the reason for that? Because it's going to serve as a witness until the end times. And then we were discussing in the previous Virtual House Church sessions that, it is written in Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 30, that in the last days, when we bring all the words of the Torah to our heart, He's going to take us back. He's going to gather us in this amazing second great exodus from the four corners of the earth. So in the way that I see this and understand this, that this song was the witness until the end time. And the only reason that we see this in Revelation, the people singing the Son of Moses, and not only the Son of Moses, and that's the mystery, because they're talking about the Son of the Lamb as well. So they're talking about two songs. In my point of view. So one song is just is the witness of everything that happened throughout the years. But in order to understand the salvation and the plan of restoration that Yahuwah brought to his people when he's going to gather us from the four corners of the earth. So that's why it's my belief that as this point, that the song that Revelation 15 is talking about is exactly the song of Deuteronomy chapter 32.
Yeah, very good. Boy, lots of stuff to talk about here. Just real quick to summarize it, because if people already saw the 2016 or 17 broadcast, they've heard the story before. But this portion just really, I got very emotional listening to it. I listened both to 2016 and the 17 this morning. But when I came to Texas, I was a really broken, beat up, hurting person, and my uncle had sponsored me to come down here to go to a scripture-based self-help program, and he flew me down from Massachusetts to parts 1 and 2, but part 3, there are 3 weekends, and on the third weekend, I drove myself down from Massachusetts with everything I owned in a Dodge Stratus. I was like, you know what, there's nothing for me here. It was too painful to continue living in Massachusetts, so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to drive down to Texas, go to this thing, get whatever healing I can get out of it, and then I don't know what I'm going to do. And I went through the program, and it was tremendously healing for me. I got a lot of benefit out of it. And then the next day, I'm sitting in the parking lot of the place where they had the seminar, and I'm like, all right, now what? I didn't really have a plan, so I figured, well, I've always wanted to make movies and stuff, so I might as well just drive out to Hollywood now. So I started to drive out to Hollywood, and I couldn't get past Fort Worth. Dallas-Fort Worth is a big metroplex, and it takes probably close to an hour and a half, 2 hours to get through the whole thing. And as I was going from Dallas to Fort Worth, the closer I got to Fort Worth, which is to the west, I just felt like this heaviness, like I couldn't go any further. Like it was, and it got worse and worse. Like by the time I got to the end of Fort Worth and was about to head past Fort Worth, through the rest of Texas head out to California, I felt like I was hitting a force field. Like it was like, nope, you're not going any further. I'm like, like I knew that I was wrestling with God, and I knew that I needed to get alone with Him to pray with Him, and just my car wasn't a good environment for that because I had like everything I owned in it, and it's pretty crowded in there, and I was like, So I went to a gas station. I found a map of the area, and I looked on the map and I saw this big reservoir that was not too far to the north, and I thought, it looks like a decent place. So I drove up there just to find a place to be in nature, to get alone with God. And I had my Bible with me, and I was sitting at a picnic table bench, and I was crying out to God. I'm like, God, you are withholding me. You're not letting me go. I know you're not letting me go. And I'm like, man, there's nothing for me here. I grew up in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, in the mountains, beautiful, and like they barely have trees here. And I'm like, this is a desert, man. There's nothing for me here. What am I doing here? And my Bible, it was like something like right out of a movie. Just it blew open, and it blew open to this chapter, Deuteronomy 32, and my eyes happened to go directly to verse 10, which says, "And he found them wandering in a desert wasteland, and he cared for them as his most prized possession." And that's where my eyes went directly. Now I have a parallel Bible, so it has King James on the left and the New Living on the right. I believe that was the New Living paraphrase of that verse. Mm-hmm. But it really spoke to me. I'm like, and I'm looking at like there's geese walking around me. I'm like, am I crazy here? And I prayed. I'm like, Father, okay, wow. Considering I literally like 10 seconds ago just said this is a desert. What am I doing here? And this verse says that he found them in the desert. He cared for them, his most prized possession. I said, okay, Father, I'll stay. Whatever you want, And since we have time, it's just the two of us today. I'll extend the story a little bit from what I talked about in the previous broadcast, but and I don't remember if I talked about this last week or whatever, but forgive me if it's a repeat, but I asked for 3 signs because I didn't want to, if this is an important decision, it's like, so I'm going to lay out the fleece, right? Father, is this really you or is this me? Am I crazy? Whatever. Even though that was cool what you do with the Bible just now. So I was like, Father, please confirm this. I want 3, I asked for 3 like billboard-sized signs that I can't mistake, like unmistakable signs. And so that you want me to stay here. And so a couple of days later, I started looking around for jobs, and I was homeless for about a month, but I lived okay as a homeless guy, to be honest with you. I got 30-day gym memberships so I could take a shower, and I learned while doing corporate video back in the 90s that hotels always had conferences, business conferences, and they always had buffets, and I knew because I videotaped enough video conferences on video that they just throw the food away. Whatever they don't eat, they throw it away. So I'm like, if they're going to throw the food away, might as well throw it into my stomach. So I just put on a nice shirt and tie, and I would go get in line in these business conferences and, hobnob with the people. Just like, yeah, what'd you think of the seminar so far? And they would talk to me. I'm like, oh, yeah, I just get free food. So I ate well, I showered well, and I bummed couches off of people when I could sleep, outside of my car every now and then. So I did all right as a homeless guy, but still I was like, I got to get a job. So I had an appointment to go to this one business, and I was halfway to that appointment when I got a phone call saying, hey, listen, we got tied up, something happened, can we take a rain check for another day? I'm like, yeah, sure. So the next appointment that was supposed to be scheduled for 2 hours later, I went 2 hours early to it, and that was to a casting agency because I figured, well, if I'm stuck in Texas and I still want to make movies, I'll figure out what the acting environment is here, and I can maybe submit my resume and stuff to get some acting work or whatever, commercials or something. And so I go to this casting agency, and I was sitting in the lobby talking with this guy, and we were talking for like 45 minutes waiting for whatever was going on. And after he left, I gave the receptionist my headshot and resume, and she says, "You have no idea who you were just talking to, do you?" I said, "No, why?" She says, "If you want to know somebody who knows everybody in Hollywood, you were just talking to him." I'm like, "Oh." Wow. I'm like, "Okay, thank you, bye." So I left her, and I ran, as he told me about this thing called the Nexus Group that he was trying to put together in Dallas. There was going to be like independent filmmakers doing, independent feature films and stuff here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he was trying to put together this networking group. And so I caught him just before he got in his car. I said, "Hey, man, listen, that Nexus thing you were telling me about, that sounds like a really great networking opportunity." I said, "Is there any chance I could, you can give me some more information? It's something I'd like to go to it." He goes, "You got a good look, you got a good attitude." He says, "I tell you what, here's my card. I'm starting the thing, so I'll walk you into the first meeting." And I'm like, "Wow, okay." So that was like big sign number one. And I'm walking to my car, and like before, when that guy from the original meeting called me and canceled, I had all these notes scribbled on like McDonald's napkins and stuff and post-it notes all over my car, and I'm thinking to myself, man, if I'm doing all the scheduling, I need a planner, like a way to organize all this stuff. So I was thinking that before I went to the casting agency. So right after John was his name, right after John gave me his card and I'm about to go in my car, he says, "Hey, kid." I said, "Yeah." He said, "If you're going to be making all these appointments and stuff, you're going to need a planner." I'm thinking to myself, seriously? Like, who does that, right? And there's only one planner that I like. It's not one that you can buy at any kind of office supply store or anything like that. It's the kind that you get complimentary from businesses. And I just like the way it's laid out. Now, somebody has given me one of those planners every year since 1997 up to that point. And so he gives me that exact planner. So I'm like, wow, okay. So I get in my car, I'm looking at this planner. It's the only kind of planner that I like. I'm like, wow, God, okay, that's big sign number two. Sign number three took a little longer for me to understand it. Sign number three, I started going to a Baptist church that was near where I was hanging out, and I went to a Bible study. And while we're at the Bible study, one of these guys named Tim found out that I was living in my car, and he's like, "Dude, I got a 3-bedroom house. I got 2 guys there, but one guy just left, so I got an extra space." He said, "You could crash with us. Don't worry about it. I know you don't have a job or anything, but crash with us till you get your feet on the ground or whatever you need to do. You're welcome." And I'm like, "Wow, cool." So I stayed with him for a while until I finally got a job and was able to get my feet on the ground, get my own apartment. Well, so all that's happening in like the first 4 months or so of 2003. In August of 2003, I laid my dream of filmmaking down. I said, "Father, if I never," because I had a job for a while, I got an apartment, ended up getting a new car because my other car broke, and then the guy who hired me, it was a freelance job, his son graduated from college, so he gave him my job after his son graduated. So then I was out of a job. So now I had a new apartment, a new car, and no more job. So I'm back to ground zero again. I'm broke. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills now already in the new place. And I'm like, oh, man. So I'm crying out to God for like April of 2003. And everything I was doing, I was applying for, there were jobs that had my picture on the job description. "We want Rob Skiba." And I'd show up and they'd be like, "Nah, you're overqualified," or "You're this," or "You're that." And I couldn't get hired to save my life. So I'm like, "You're doing it again." Like, he wouldn't let me leave. He wouldn't let me get a job. I'm like, "Father, you promised me. You said, you're going to take care of me here." I said, "I'm trying. I'm trying. I got my resume out everywhere." I said, "You're going to have to provide for me." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what." He said, "You spend time with me, and I'll provide for you." I said, "Okay, I don't know how that's going to work, but all right." Well, from April to December of 2003, somehow all of my bills got paid with no job. Like, they did. He provided too many stories to tell here, but crazy testimonies of the entire year how he provided for me. But in August, I was really broken down. And actually, in the broadcast that you were on with me in 2017, we were talking about fasting because Day of Atonement, right? So you and I were talking about fasting in the 2017 thing. So in that broadcast, and I didn't mention it in that broadcast, but I'm mentioning it here. That's why I'm explaining all this. I said there was a time in my life where I was going to fast until I died. I was so desperate. I'm like, Father, you're either going to provide for me or I'll see you soon. that was my attitude. Like, you're gonna have to come through for me, or I'm just going to fast until I'm dead, and then you can explain it to me when I get there. So this is part of my wrestling with God phase, and I got through probably a couple weeks of fasting when there was a breakthrough, but. And this is, I think it was August of 2003, and I laid my dream down. I said, Father, I've chased this dream of filmmaking my whole life. If I never make a TV show or movie or do anything with video again, I don't care anymore. I finally broke down and just said, it's yours. And symbolically, I presented it before him, like I physically went through the motions, like I was pretending he was in front of me, and I pretended to lay the dream down at his feet. I said, I want what you want. And from August to December, we had this amazing, sweet time of fellowship that was really consisted of me locking myself away in my apartment, crying a lot, praying a lot, and reading my Bible. That's about all I did. But he did tremendous things in me during that season. And I also got baptized in the Holy Spirit during that season, which was something, as a conservative Baptist, I didn't understand and was desperate for, and got to understand that. Lots of things happened. And then in the end of December, and in this season, when my faith was shaken in God's sense of humor and sovereignty, he introduced me to one of the first people I met at that Bible study was a woman named Faith. So here I'm low in my faith, and he introduces me to this powerhouse of a woman who is a very godly woman my age, and she was very instrumental in helping me through a lot of it. Anyway, she got a job as a temp secretary at the East-West Ministries, and a invoice came across her desk for a video that they just had produced for one of the missionaries, and it was $40,000 for this one video, which, considering the travel and the work and everything that goes into that kind of production, that's reasonable. But she told me that, and I said, listen, you need to get me an interview with these people. So she did. She got me an interview with the Human Resources Department, and I came in there with some of my other work, and I said, listen, I know what you guys are paying for video. Put me on salary for that, for a 1 year salary of that, and I'll make as many videos as you want. So for the price of one video, they hired me. They thought it was a good deal. They hired me for $40,000 for a year. I made 12 videos that year for the price that they paid for one video, and continued to work at that salary for several years. Well, my first assignment was Cuba, and so they fly me down to Cuba, and there's a lot that I could tell on that, but I'll cut it short here. I kept driving by this building every day, and the Holy Spirit told me I need to shoot footage of that building. So I told the driver, I said, listen, I don't know why, but we keep driving by this building. Can you stop the car? I need to videotape it. He goes, yeah, sure, whatever. So he pulls over, and I didn't know why I did it at the time, but I shot it all shaky, like crazy, and instead of just nice and still. And the last shot that I did, I zoomed in on a guard tower, and this guy with an AK-47 turns and he sees me videotaping, and I'm like, ooh, shut the camera down and jump in the car. Let's get out of here, So he took off. Well, then I ended up going to Havana, and I met this older gentleman who went to prison for his faith in 1965. And they kicked the door in, and they drug him and I guess some other family members and friends or whatever out, and they psychologically tortured the guy for 2 years just because he was a Christian. Only because he was a Christian. And his story was so powerful that when I got back to Dallas, I kept thinking about it. I'm like, man, I want to reenact his story, like shoot a reenactment of what happened to him, And he told me this story about these, like they would take him out to the field that had these big piles of rock, and he and his friends in the blistering heat would have to move these huge piles of rock from one end of the field to the other, and then, okay, now move them back, and like just messing with him. And they'd take him out other times and blindfold him, he and his friends, and then the guards would shoot off some rounds into the sky and then separate them all and make them think that their friends were killed. Just really, doing nasty stuff to him. And so I'm thinking about all this, and I was at the treadmill in my apartment complex, running on the treadmill, and I look out the back, and they're building a new phase of the apartment complex, and they had this big field with all these big piles of rock back there. So I'm like, wow, that would make a good location. So then, that program that I went to that saved my life, I had now become a volunteer there, so I was helping out, giving back what was given to me, and facilitating these small groups of 5 people. And so I had this small group, and this Hispanic guy was in the group. So after it was over, I pulled him aside and said, "Hey, listen, man, I'm thinking about doing a documentary on these people in Cuba, and I need some Hispanic people to play some parts for me. Would you be interested?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, man, that'd be fun." He's like, I get my brother and some friends and stuff. I'm like, "Oh, really? That's great." So now I had location and actors. Now I'm thinking, well, I need uniforms and props and machine guns and stuff to do this. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? You know, like maybe buy some squirt guns and paint them black or something. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I remember that guy that knows everybody in Hollywood that I met a year earlier, you know, and I'm like, man, John, I bet you he would probably know where I could get some of these props and stuff. So I was like, I couldn't find his phone number anywhere. Like, I didn't have it in my Rolodex card thing. So I'm like, oh man, where's his card? You know, and then I remembered the planner that he had given me was in my tax folder. So I pull out the planner, I grab the card, and I call him up. I say, "Hey John, listen, I'm thinking about doing this documentary. I need some Russians uniforms and AK-47s props and stuff." I said, "Would you happen to know anybody?" He goes, "Dude, I got just what you need." He says, "Here's my address, come on over." So I go over his house, and he opens the garage, and he had his whole garage was full of uniforms and weapons, rocket launchers, pistols, rifles, like, and all authentic, like non-functioning but authentic, you know, real weapons that were made into movie props, because he was going to do a war movie, an independent feature film that never happened. Like, they ran out of funding or something, and the project never happened. But he had all the props. So he says, "Yeah, man, take whatever you want. You know, just let me have it." You know, I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So now here's the kicker. The third sign that I asked for that I didn't know I already had was Tim, the guy that told me that I could live with him. He looks exactly like the guy that I interviewed in Havana when he was younger, like, you know, 30, 40 years ago. So he looks so much like him. I asked him, I said, "Can you play this guy, you know, play the part of him being the victim, you know?" And when I finally finished, this was my first film now, my first little mini movie. When I laid my dream down, he gave it back to me in a different way. When I showed it at a missionary conference, the gentleman who lived that I interviewed in Cuba, his daughter was in the United States, and when she saw the video that I played, she freaked out. She pulled me aside. She says, How did you get video footage of my father in prison from 1965? Like, she thought that it was him. I said, "That's not your dad. That's just the guy that I know around here that happens to look like him." So, you know, this is why this portion just means so much to me, because this was the portion that literally sent me on my life path that I'm on today. Everything that I've done from the foreign mission field to, you know, seed and everything else, all traces back to this. And, you know, this is why I'm a big believer in praying for confirmation. Is when God gives you a sign, you know, I think we're supposed to test the spirits to see whether they be of God. You know, I needed to know. So, Father, if this is really you, please confirm it. And the 3 signs that I asked for, what the heck am I doing in Texas? There's nothing for me here. Made all of my dreams come true, restored my life, everything that I lost in my divorce. I met Sheila at the ministry. You know, I was just in the shower this morning, just, you know, almost in tears, just like, Father, wow. You know, I had my Job-like experience where you lose everything, and then in the Job story, you see how he was so completely restored, you know, after that. Yeah. And I'm living in the restoration now. So, you know, some of you have heard the story before, but, you know, I just want to share this maybe as a way of testimony for others maybe who haven't heard the story before. But this portion just really means a lot to me.
That's an amazing testimony, Rob, actually, you know, and it's funny that you mentioned about Job, because you mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast that I was keeping John Hekipurin yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I was reading about Job, actually. And, you know, oh, wow. It's so amazing that I think it's the way that Abba somehow treat with us. It's like the prodigal son. Is that we need to go to the bottom, to the lowest part, mm-hmm. in order for him to work within us and restore us. And you know, actually, while you were talking and sharing your testimony, I was thinking that even you can make a movie with your testimony. Because
yes.
There's so many things happening in your life in this story that it would be nice that maybe you can do something about it.
Yes, thank you. I actually did start writing it. It was called, the title of the script was The Last Christian. And the reason I titled it that was because in 2002 is when my whole life blew up. I want to say like 2 weeks after my wife left me and I found out what was going on and she was cheating on me and everything. This guy, I had done a missionary trip 2 years earlier in 2000 to Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. And that was for another ministry called Bearing Precious Seed International. And I did a video for them about the ministry down there that we did and everything at that time back in 2000. And then so when all of this blew up in my whole life, everything just fell apart. It was like a week or two later, that guy that was the head of that ministry called me up, and basically he was offering me a job to work for Bearing Precious Seed International to do exactly the same thing that I did for East West Ministries 2 years later. He wanted me to do for Bearing Precious Seed, but I was like, dude, this is a dream job. I would love to do it, but like I told him what happened and what was going on in my life at the time, and I was like, dude, I'm too jacked up right now. There's nothing I can do right now. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to decline. And on the plane ride home, I was just so broken. I was just like, Father, this is a dream job. This is what I would always want, but I'm too jacked up to do it. Like, I'm just like, and I prayed a prayer. I said, Father, I don't care how you do it, but somehow, some way, I want you to be instrumental in using me to lead the last person to Christ before you come back. I don't care how it happens. Maybe it's one-on-one. Maybe I meet somebody and minister to them and they go write a check to a missionary and that missionary goes to Zimbabwe and he preaches to somebody and that guy takes off and he preaches to somebody and that person gets... I don't care how it works. I just want to be in the chain somewhere. I want to be in line for the last person to have be instrumental in the last person before he comes back. And so that was my prayer, for that. And so that's why the script is called The Last Christian. Based on that prayer. So the story is going to start with the coming home, finding everything out with my marriage and everything, and then that story, and then the crucible, and then the ministry and restoration would be the the overall story. Someday.
Oh, that's going to be amazing.
Someday.
You need to let us know when you're going to do it, and then just put the script together.
Yeah, if the Lord tarries, it's. Looking at the times that we're in right now, I was just talking to my mom about this yesterday. I'm like, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Maybe we don't know the time. I truly believe that we are very close, and a lot of people believe that we are getting closer and closer. But if we are wrong, maybe you will have the time to share your testimony in the screen. And I think I feel myself somehow reflected on what you are telling. For sure, my story is not similar like yours in the details. And I know that many people have gone through difficulties, and that's the way that Yahuwah has been working with us in order to know His path. Now, in my case, I can share with you. I don't know if I did it in previous broadcast. I grew up as a pastor kid and participated in the church since I have memory until the age of 33 something.
Oh, wow.
If I not recall. Sorry?
I said, oh, wow, 33, because that was when my life blew up was when I was 33.
Okay.
So also a pastor's kid. So, yeah, man, we are a lot alike, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. My walk in Torah started around the end of 2011, the beginning of 2012, something in that period of time. And what happened to me is that at the end of 2011, I was fired for my job. I had a family, 2 kids, and a lot of debt. Mm-hmm. And I was totally broke with savings for sure, but trying to find a job during an entire year. And just to make the story short, the entire 2012 for me was a sabbatical year. I didn't find any job until the end of 2012. And desperate time to time because I didn't have any income. And but every time that I remember that period of time is so amazing because it was the period of time that Yahuwah worked within me. Mm-hmm. And starting to show me his truth in his scripture, in his word. And and that's why I feel so connected to what you are saying, because it was in the moment of desperation. It was in the moment of everything was lost, that Yahuwah was showing to me that he was the one taking care of me. Mm-hmm. And I was looking for a job, trying to do something, starting a own company in my field of experience, and nothing was happening. No job, not business closing in this company that I tried to start, and the month was starting and the money was almost out at the middle of the year. And several things started to happen during that period of time. Even I had to ask for a loan in the bank. That was around June, August 2012. And even in that situation, I was so afraid to ask for that money in the bank, because I didn't have any income. And I was thinking that the bank was going to ask me for a lot of paper to demonstrate that I was working and I have a income at that time. And I was praying a lot during that period of time. And I thought in my heart that I had to ask for the money. And I did it. And amazingly, Yahuwah was working so much in that way. And now we can think that, you're asking for money, it's not from Yahuwah, but that was the way that he was somehow helping me during that period of time while I was studying his word. And in the bank, they didn't ask for any paper, they didn't ask for any confirmation that I was having a job and so on. They just, in a matter of days, they gave me the money. And with that money, I was able to survive until the end of that year. And when the money was almost exhausted, and no money was coming, was able to sustain me that time. It was in December of that year of 2012, and was in January I was without money at all. And it was in December when I found a job. And what's funny, and that's the comic part of all of this, because that's the way that Yahuwah somehow working us. I was hired in an Israeli company. And I started to work with a lot of Israeli people here in Hebrew all the time.
Wow.
Talking to the guys about his history, about the Torah and so on. And, it was so amazing. And Yahuwah was sustaining me and my family during all this period of time. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any lack of anything. I was working at the end of the year with Israeli people here in Hebrew, sharing about Torah and so on. And he was sustaining me in order to pay the credit back. And, that year, was so amazing, because I find myself with so many experiences. I think I shared in previous broadcasts that, my daily routine back then was going to Starbucks, because I needed internet connection. I needed to be out of home in order to start looking for a job. And so I was doing my own stuff there. And during a discussion that two guys were having in a shared table over there, they were talking between them. For me, it was just noise, because I was looking for a job and also sharing my time studying the word of Yahuwah. And in one moment where I was hearing just noise from them, and my ears were open and just hear one phrase: in 6 months, you will receive light. And then I started to hear only noise. The people talking, blah, 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 blah. And, for me, it was so nice, because at that time I was used to take some notes of the experiences that I was having, the dreams that I were having that year, that I had a lot of dreams starting that year and years later. And I started to write this down all together. So I wrote down this experience with this phrase, and I put the day when I received it. 2 years later, I was taking a look in the notebook, and I came to that place where I took that note. And I started to calculate when I received it, and it's exactly 6 months later after that day is when I got the job. And also it was exactly when I started to walk deeper in the truth of the word of Yahuwah. So So and I think most probably a lot of people has been facing similar experiences that when we are totally broken, when we are desperate, when we are in need, and we are really seeking and searching for Yahuwah, as is written in His Word, when we seek with our heart, with our strength, with our mind, we are going to find Him. And this is what happened to me, and this is what I'm hearing that happened to you, and most probably for a lot of people as well that is here listening to us in this broadcast. So somehow it's funny, but it's the way that he always treats with us.
Yeah, you mentioned dreams. I had a lot of dreams in that season also. And they were like deep, profound dreams that I would remember when I wake up. A lot of times when I dream, I remember a little bit of the dream going, wow, that was weird or whatever, but that's all I remember. I just remember, well, that was interesting, or that was weird, or that was funny, or that was whatever. But I don't remember the details. But the dreams that I was having in that season were so vivid and full of tremendous revelation. And I started journaling it too. I've got a whole list of dreams that I had in 2003 that I wrote down, and I actually found them in a box not too long ago when I was going through, because I've moved several times since then. But I wonder if that's if that's sort of the routine when people get alone with God and they go through this crucible season of alone time. Some people call it the dark night of the soul. That they go through the season of prayer and fasting, that you get the visions in the dreams like that, because that seems to be pretty common. I've heard that from other people as well.
Yeah, I think it's very common, and it is funny because you said that in your experience you were baptized in the Holy Spirit during that period of time. In my own experience, it happened something very similar. When I was participating in church, when I was, I think, 11, 12 years old, I had a spiritual experience, and I was baptized in the Ruach. And, it was an amazing experience because it was an American pastor that was in church back then. And they invited all the people to go on and receive for him to pray for the people. So there was a long queue of people going and waiting for him to impose hands over the head. And when my time came, I just remember when this pastor put his hands on my head, and I went completely black. I didn't remember anything, because I just came to my senses when I was kneeling in the other side of the church, crying out, and somebody told me that I was speaking in tongues. I don't remember that much. So how I got from one point from church to the other, I don't remember, because at the moment he put his hands on my head, I went black. So I always remember that experience, and during that 2012, I was wondering within me, because I had this so deeper need of Yahuwah. No matter that I was departing from church around 33, my faith, my emunah was always here in the heart. I went through different, like the prodigal son, I went through different experiences since I left church until Yahuwah took my hand again in order to go through the ancient path. That in that moment was a desperation within myself to seek Yahuwah, and I was remembered that experience that I just said about the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh. And I was even trying to get in contact with that pastor. This is our own mind trying to look for the pen and the people instead of going to Yahuwah. And I remember that day, I felt so sad because I was looking internet how to take contact, get in contact with this person, and I found out that he died, I don't know, 2 years before I was looking for him. And I felt so sad that moment that I went to the room, I went down and started to cry and to pray to Yahuwah. And and my prayer was that I wanted to remember that experience, that I wanted to feel him in the same way that I felt him when I was a kid. And something so amazing happened that I felt his presence going from the top of my head to the top of my toes. And I felt something like somebody was standing in front of me, just putting his hand here in my head and so on. And it was, it's like the same experience that I had when I was a kid, because my mouth was talking somehow. I was totally conscious, and it was the Ruach HaKodesh going through me. So this is the way that he treats with us. This is the way that when we seek him with all our heart, is the way that we're going to find him. And it's so relevant to what we are discussing about this portion. No matter that for me, it wasn't like you, Rob, that you got exactly the words in this portion of the Torah. That this is the way I understand the Son of Moses. Is the witness. Is the witness for us to understand that the only way to receive life is standing in the rock. And one of the points that for me was important, that is written so many times in this passage, is about the rock. And who is the rock in this case is Yahuwah. But if we remember the word of Mashiach in Matthew chapter 7, he said that we need to build our house in the rock, because when the strong wind is coming, the house will stand. So if we follow Mashiach and if we follow his word, we are going to build our house in the rock. And what's the rock? Is Yahuwah. And the only way to do this is to remember Yahuwah, to stick and to cling to him and to hold fast to him and to follow and guard his covenant and his commandments. And that was my whole experience, because in that moment I was going back to the ancient path. I was following Torah. I was understanding covenant, understanding that it was not only following Mashiach and believing in him, it's also to walk in Torah, to walk in the covenant of Yahuwah. And that's the amazing thing, in the way that I received the Son of Moses. It's the witness for us to remember that we need to keep the way of Yahuwah all the days of our life.
Yeah, amen. Absolutely. Wow. You mentioned seeking the Lord with all your heart, and that the experience that you had, you felt like from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. I've had that experience too, where, it only comes, though, when you really, truly do seek with all your heart. Like, nothing else is around. Nothing else matters. Like, this is the only thing that matters. That's when that experience happens. Because, I've talked to people, atheists and other people, and what I've found in dealing with atheists especially is they tend to know the Bible better than most Christians do. It's just something in the Bible that they read that that doesn't resonate with them in their reality of life, caused them to say this is all garbage, and frankly, even as a Christian myself, I've struggled with this even recently, not too long ago, maybe even within a few days ago, is where you read in Scripture that Yahuwah actively engages in the lives of people in the Bible, and they're doing stuff, even in the Haftorah portion for this week's study. What is it? 2 Samuel 22. Some of the things that David's testifying to. I think it's David here. Yeah. And of course, he says, "You are my rock." So the whole theme of the rock is here, over and over and over again. But you see, as he's giving testimony in 2 Samuel. Let me put this up on the screen here. 2 Samuel 22. He's giving testimony about all kinds of stuff in here, and how he delivered him from a strong enemy, and just some of the things that Yahuwah enabled him to do. I'm not seeing it as I'm just scanning through it here.
It's in 22 verse 2. Second Samuel.
Yeah, the rock. But there's some of the exploits that he talks about being able to do towards the end. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Because he talks about the victory he gains and how he's able to he almost sounds like Superman at some point. I'm able to leap over tall buildings, and all the exploits. God is my strength and my power. He makes my way perfect. Teaches my hands to war. Shield of salvation. I have pursued my enemies and destroyed them and turned not again. I'm missing it here. Girded me with strength to battle. I'm not seeing it.
Actually, this.
There's a lot here.
A lot of things here. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot here, but essentially, he's giving testimony here, just like we're giving testimony here. And he's able to do almost superhuman things. It sounds like, and you can read in like the Testament of the patriarchs and stuff where the 12 sons of Jacob are doing these amazing exploits and things, and we see all through the Bible where the angel of the Lord showing up and talking to people, one-on-one, or personally helping them do, or going before them, and when we read the Bible, there's a sense that Yahuwah is very present and actively working in their lives and in front of their faces, like they're seeing things happen. And it's tempting, especially in Western society, to say, well, where is that? That doesn't happen anymore. Like, why isn't he doing things? And I had to correct myself when I was thinking about it. Even as I'm talking right now, I'm correcting myself, because I'm thinking, well, when I was in the foreign mission field, he's still doing that stuff. Exploits are still happening in India and Kazakhstan and Cuba and all the different places I went to, Kenya, and all this stuff. He's still working in mighty ways there, and the only conclusion I can come to in that regard is because in many cases that's all these people have. We have modern hospitals and medicine and all kinds of technology and things that, frankly, human beings living in Western society today have little need of God. Like they can get it through technology, or they can get it through, the abundance that we are privileged to have in countries like the United States, certainly. But in the foreign mission field, in places that I went to, third world countries and places where people are living in grass huts, on stilts and in the jungles and stuff like that, they don't have CVS. They don't have, the hospitals. They don't have the technology. They have a relationship with the Creator, and He's their provider, and He shows up, and He does things, right there. Why? Because they don't have any distractions. They are able to seek Him with their whole heart. And in that season that you went through in 2012 and the season that I went to in 2003, in both of the testimonies that we're giving here, we had nothing else. Everything else was stripped away from us, and we were in a place where, in our wrestling with God, like I prayed, I'm like, Father, you're going to have to provide for me. And He's like, okay, well, you spend time with me and I'll provide it for you. And He put me in this position where that's all I could do, was spend time for Him. And it's in that season when it's just you and Him. I mean, if you read the book of Joshua, chapter 3, it gives you an elaborated story on how and why Enoch was worthy to walk with God and become a was not, because God took him. It tells you like he would spend so many times, so many days of the week with God and so many days of the week with man, and that got to the point where he was spending like 363 days with God and 1 day with man. It was getting to that point where Yahuwah was like, basically, hey, you know what? You're closer to my house than your house. Why don't you just stay with me? So it's no wonder that he had the experience with Yahuwah that he did, and the other prophets the same thing. And so, I'm even as I'm saying this, I'm kind of encouraging myself now, because I think, like many people, I like many people are concerned about what's the future going to be, especially here in the United States, where we've got this countdown to November 3rd, and frankly, it's going to stink either way. I mean, if he stays in, the liberals are going to go completely insane, worse than they already are. And if the liberals get in, it's unthinkable, So, there's a lot of uncertainty here. But if faith builds upon faith and experience builds upon experience, then I've certainly had enough in my own life to show me that in that season where there feels like there's nothing, that he was most present, because I had less distraction. I had more time to spend with him. And that's where I started praying, and I still recommend people pray this prayer if you don't believe that God's real. And I tell atheists this all the time. I say, listen, if I discern that they actually are searching, they really genuinely are on a quest for truth, they just haven't found it yet, then I love those people, because they'll have their issues, and if I can find out what their issues are and maybe address them, that's great. But regardless, if I know that they are genuine seekers of truth, they just haven't found it yet, I always recommend this prayer, and this is a prayer that I've prayed many times myself, is, okay, God, if you're up there, you know, Yahuwah, however you choose to pronounce, the Creator, if you're up there and you're real, then reveal yourself to me in tangible ways. In other words, ways that I can see, hear, taste, touch, smell, a way that I can know. Like right now, I can't touch you, but I can see you. You know, you are tangible to me. I can hear you. You know. And so I started praying that way. Father, like, do that. Like, I need to be able to hear you. I need to be able to see you. And I need to be able to feel you. And he would do it, man. Like, I had so many experiences in that season. I mean, there's one time where I was so desperate and crying out. I'm like, Father, like, and I prayed that morning. I'm like, I need a tangible expression of your love today, because I'm not feeling it. Like, I'm desperate, you know. And so I walk into a dollar store, and I needed to buy some shaving cream and razors. And other people have heard me tell this story before, but I'll tell it again here. And I'm praying, like, Father, I need a tangible expression of your love, right? So I walk into this dollar store, and there's this bin of stuffed animals. It was right there. And this young kid walked in behind me, and he went right to the bin of stuffed animals, and I went over to the shaving cream aisle, and he picked up this stuffed animal and he squeezed it, and it starts singing "Jesus Loves Me," right? So here I am praying, like, Father, I need an expression of your love, and I'm looking at the razors, you know, and in the background I hear, "Jesus loves me, this I know," you know. And I start, I'm holding the bag of razors, like, I'm crying, right? and the kid kept squeezing it too. He just kept squeezing it and it kept singing. I'm like, oh. So I finally, you know, I paid for my stuff, and I get in the car, and I'm like, wow, that was kind of cool, you know. And I turned on the stereo, and it was on a secular radio station, and it's Bon Jovi singing a song, "I Will Always Love You," and it was on the chorus, and "I will always love you." And I'm like, oh, Bon Jovi, even Bon Jovi. And then I went to this, right after that, I drove to this Smoothie King that I used to go to every day to get a smoothie. And it's run by a Hindu guy, but he always played Christian radio. He had Christian radio playing on the speakers. And as soon as I walk in the door, there was a Christian song that was playing, and I walked in on the chorus, and it was, "I love you more than the sun and the moon and the stars in the sky." Like, as soon as I walked in the door, I'm like, you know. And so, I mean, I had three very tangible, you know. The first time, maybe you could say, okay, that's a coincidence. But second time and third time, you're like, all right. You know, like, I asked for it and I got it, you know, like, and I believe that I actually believe he wants to do that to us every day, that he wants to have that finding you in your desert and caring for you as as his most prized possession. You know, like, Moses is about to die here, you know. I mean, he's literally going to die, you know. Which was so interesting at the 2016 broadcast, because we're reading the story about Moses about to die, and I get the phone call, like, literally 10 minutes before I went on the air, from my mother that my uncle's about to die. And it was because of my uncle that I came to Texas, and all these stories that I'm telling you even happened in the first place. You know, so, and this song of Moses it's a desperate song, you know. It's a song of desperation, but he had lived a life of walking with God, right from his, you know, delivery from being murdered, you know, by the Pharaoh, to his time as a shepherd, to his time, you know, growing up in the house of Pharaoh, to his exile after he left, from killing the Egyptian, and all that to happen there, and then the entire time he's in the wilderness. I mean, he's climbing mountains and hanging out and talking with them face to face as one speaks with a friend. Asked to see all his glory, and the hand of God protects him in the cleft of the rock, and he turns around and sees the backside of God walking away from him, and he's going into the Holy of Holies, and he's talking with him on a regular basis, and he's leading these people, millions of people, and he can't even go into this place that was their destination. I'm like, man. But I mean, you look at the life of Moses, and in the Quest for Truth that I'm doing with Zen right now, we're looking at the life of Abraham. Same thing.
Okay.
The same type of character. In the last episode we did this past Wednesday night, was talking about the young life of Abraham when he was hidden away in the house of Noah and Shem, and how he's like.
I was reading about it this morning. Actually.
You were, yeah, because he's got the same heart. He's like, Father or God, if you're out there, whoever, Creator, maybe it's the sun. So he's contemplating, could it be the sun, or maybe it's the moon? Could it be no? And then he gets this whole story with his dad. Has all the idols that he made. He's like, these are made of wood and stone, and he pulls a little trick on his dad, but like you could see his heart, like he genuinely wanted to know, and he wasn't going to stop at anything until he got the truth. He's like, I don't know who the real God is. I hear Noah and Shem telling me this. I hear my dad saying that. I see what other people are doing. I'm looking at the sun. I'm looking at the moon. I'm looking at the stars. This is, I think, what it means to seek Him with all your heart. Where it's like the only thing you care about is, I gotta hear from you. I gotta see you. I gotta feel something from you. And at least in my life, and I could spend the rest of the day giving testimony to this, I have found that in the seasons when I was going through that, there was a time where I swore I saw him. It was through a tremendous flood of tears, so it was very blurry. But I believe, and I don't care what anybody else says, but I believe I saw something, the manifestation of him in front of me. When I was sitting on a chair just weeping, bawling my eyes out, could barely breathe. I didn't even know what it. I mean, I'd heard about hyperventilation. When you hyperventilate. This was the first time I experienced it, where like literally my breath was taken. Like I couldn't breathe. I'm like I couldn't get air, and it was at that time, man, I saw a human figure kneel before me and put his hand on my knee when I was sitting there, and he took that pain from me.
Wow.
He's very real. But he
No, actually, go ahead.
Well, I'll just conclude that by saying he is very real, but he is so amazing that he reserves his manifestation for those who truly want it. Especially since Yeshua. Because you see, like in the Old Testament and even in the New Testament, there's a lot of miracles happening where God is physically doing stuff. And then it seems to just stop. And I struggle with it, like, why? And I believe the answer came to me is because I want to do it through you guys now. Peter's shadow is healing people, after that. Like, I want to, and my prayer when I was actively involved in the ministry there was, Father, see through my eyes, hear through my ears, and touch through my hands. Here I am, a broken vessel that I am. Use me today to touch somebody. That's what he's looking for. That's why people would say, be Jesus with skin on, right? Get out there. I forget, there was I think it was a Saint somebody, another Augustine or somebody, I don't remember, Francis Assisi, somebody, I don't remember who it was, but he said, I will preach the gospel every day. And if I absolutely have to, I'll use words. In other words, what he was saying is, I'm going to try to live it. I'm going to try to be it. If I have to speak it, great. But, I want to live it and I want to be it. And I think that's, maybe that's the message for today's virtual house church is, we all need to be doing that.
Actually, we have been sharing a lot of experiences. And nobody it's not totally related to the portion. Sometimes Yahuwah he speaks through us, and he knows what we need to hear, what we need to share it, and so on. And I think the message you're sharing as well there, Rob, is so important, especially as you said on the days that we're living. I remember Kevin shared a few weeks ago that it's not only a matter to follow Torah, it's not a matter to keep covenant, it's not a matter to follow the step of Mashiach only. All of that is really important. But if we don't have a relationship, a personal relationship with Yahuwah, we're not going to enjoy those kind of experiences with Him. And we need to get to know Yahuwah at that level. And you put it together so easily, Rob, because we need to spend time with Him alone. And especially on those times of desperation when we're totally broken, that's why maybe so easy, because we are with that urgent need in our heart to seek Him, to search for Him with all our strength. But I think for all of us, sometimes it's so difficult. I'm struggling every day. I think all of us are struggling every day. Especially this year has been so complicated. Everything that's going on outside in the world is pushing us to go in the wrong direction. So it's staying in the way and to have this strength in order to have this relationship with Yahuwah. Some days it's not easy. So that's why it's so important that we remind ourselves the need of search for Yahuwah with all our heart. And it can just come to my mind what is written on the 7 Assemblies in Revelation to Laodicea. So we need to remember the first love to Yahuwah. And when we have this first love for Yahuwah is when we're seeking Him with all our heart. So it is completely normal. It's completely normal that some days is more difficult, some weeks is more difficult. But while we have Yahuwah as the first thing in our heart, it will come the day that we will feel our spirit so light that is totally connected to Him. So if somebody is listening to us this broadcast, and is going through some difficulties, just remember that it's a matter to seek Yahuwah with all the heart. Just to put Yahuwah up front, not to put ourselves up front. And I will tell you something, Rob. Actually, sometimes I don't share this kind of thing because it could be wrong interpreted. But I wasn't feeling really good and really easy to join Virtual House Church today. I don't know why. But I felt some heaviness in my ruach before joining the session today, that I wasn't feeling that good. But I received a word that I cannot put myself up front. It's Yahuwah's word, and we need to let Him use it as His instrument, as His servant, and so on. And it's really good that I heard that word, because everything that we're speaking is also speaking to me. That we need to remember every day of our lives that the most important thing, the priority in our lives, is not even us. It's Yahuwah Eloheinu. If we put Him up front as the priority in our minds, in our heart, everything will happen. And I was just going back to the verse 30, and you brought this to a table, Rob, is about these last days that we are living. And we go to Deuteronomy chapter 30, because this is especially on the last days. And it says in the verse 2 the following: and shall turn back to Yahuwah. And let me read from the verse 1 onward. It says, and it shall be when all these words come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you shall bring them back to your heart among all the nations where Yahuwah your Elohim drives you, and shall turn back to Yahuwah your Elohim and obey His voice, according to all that I command you today. And this is the secret that we are talking now. With all your heart and with all your being, you and your children, then Yahuwah your Elohim shall turn back your captivity and shall have compassion on you. So the secret is exactly what we are discussing and sharing now, is to seek Yahuwah with all our heart, is to get to know him at that level that we are going to seek him, as Yahushua said, seek first the priority of our life, seek first the kingdom of Yah and his righteousness, and everything else will come in addition, because he takes care of us. And especially, in the days that are coming now, the days are coming ahead, this year, next year. It's my belief, and we have been sharing in the previous broadcast that what will happen in November in America, in the US. We don't know. I have some theories about that. I was sharing with Jake as well a few weeks ago about what we think is the place of America in the prophecy. So I think a few things will start happening, unfolding even more than we have been seeing with our eyes until now, by the end of this year and especially next year. And we have been sharing, all of us, Kevin, Jake, you and me in these virtual houses, that we will go through tribulation. All these teachings about the pre-tribulation rapture, I don't believe in that. I believe in a rapture. Yes, I believe in a rapture. But rapture is coming even after the second Exodus. So we will go through tribulation. So it's more than ever, everything that we are discussing now is becoming even more important. Now is the time that we need to seek Yahuwah with all our heart, because this is the time to learn, to seek Yahuwah with all our heart, because when the time of troubles comes, we are going to find refuge in him. But only we seek him with all our heart, starting from today onward, from yesterday actually, seeking Yahuwah with all our heart, because when the time comes, we're going to be safe. He's going to protect us. But we need to be under his shadow. And to be under his shadow is not only following in a mechanic way, following his commandment and his covenant. We need to do it in our experience with all our heart, seeking and having this relationship with him. During that year that I was sharing with you, Rob, I was also having a lot of experiences. And there's something that you mentioned, that nowadays we don't see these big miracles that we see in the stories on the scripture. But in my eyes, there are two things that we don't consider. The first one, I think those miracles exist, and I have been experiencing those miracles in my whole life. But sometimes they are so subtle that we don't realize, because we are so used to our day-to-day, to technologies and so on, that we don't realize the small things that are big things at the same time that Yahuwah do for us. And just let me share something that happened to me in a business trip, and it's related to technology and so on. And it's something very small, but it's also big. I was in a business trip, and I needed to come back. It was the fly back to home that day. And I was doing I was buying final stuff that day, and I was almost in a rush. So to the place that I needed to go to buy the final stuff, I needed to park my car, and it was totally crowded. And I didn't have a way, I didn't find any parking lot where to park the car. So I was driving a roundabout. And I had the GPS in my phone. But, in that moment, something was in my heart. I said, why I need to use technology? Why not? I cannot ask Yahuwah in the same way that David was asking him to guide him to the right, to the left, or where to go. So what I did, I turned off my phone. I was asking Yahuwah, to the Ruach, to guide me. I was feeling in my heart internally, turn right. So I turned right. Then turn left. Keep straight. I keep straight. And in one moment, I hear stop. And I stop, and I find to my left, it was, in the more crowded place, when it was impossible to find a spot to park the car, was exactly the space I needed to park the car.
Yeah.
So I think the point that I want to make is exactly what you said, Rob. Sometimes we are so used to our modern way of life that we don't realize that if we depend only on Yahuwah, even in the small things, he do things for us. Those miracles happen. And the second thing that I was discussing in the past with my family is that, and my dad was bringing this to me as well in one moment, that why those big miracles doesn't happen in our days. Is because Yahuwah changed? No, because we know that he doesn't change. It's because of us. Because we have not seek him with all our heart, because we are not pure of spirit, because we are so connected to our day-to-day way of living, instead of finding time to spend with him alone in order to have this relationship with him. So I think it is a combination of all of that, is to follow the step of Yahushua, is to keep the Torah of Yahuwah, to follow his commandment, but also to have this close relationship in order for him to work through us, through his Ruach, in order to see these big miracles happen. And it's my belief that we will see very soon those miracles happen, especially in the days that we're living. So there are so many stuff that we need to remind ourselves day by day, and to keep our eyes and our ears and our mind open to the small things that are happening, because Yahuwah is present everywhere. It's just a matter to hear the birds singing every morning, and we can see. It's just we concentrate ourselves that they are doing it every morning and every evening, because they're raising their prayers to Yahuwah in the same way that we need to do it. So those are small miracles that we need to be attentive, because it's Yahuwah in all of that.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. Boy, there's a lot of things that you said there that really resonated with me. And it's like, the birds, the animals, the insects, he provides for all of them. There's a nature preserve near where we live. And when I really want to get alone with God, that's where I go. I need to be, like I said earlier, I need to be out in nature, because with computers and technology and everything, there's too many distractions. So it's like, leave the phone in the car, get out, go, And as I was walking through the nature preserve yesterday, I was looking at all the plant life that is just thriving, there. And I was like, man, because I'm this year is the year I was trying to do some gardening, and that's just, man, it's rough. Like it's so, I'm like, how come everything grows so great out here, but it doesn't in my backyard? And like that stuff doesn't need to be watered every day. He takes care of it. And so it's he's trying to teach me something. I'm probably too thick and got too much noise around me to maybe hear it at the moment, but there's something to be learned there, and that's why I like. In fact, probably after I get off the show today, I'm going to go back out. It's a beautiful day out there again, so we'll probably go out to the nature preserve and get alone. And also, you just did the Day of Atonement yesterday, and many people fast. The command is to afflict your soul. Like. There's no real description as to what that means, but if people are wondering about that, they could go listen to the 2017 broadcast. And actually, there's something else I would recommend people do. I'm going to do a screen share here again. If people go to the Virtual House Church website and scroll all the way down to right under week 53, there's a link actually right above it, I should say. Right above the week 53 is the Yom Kippur link. So click on that link, and I updated the page last night. There's a whole bunch of scripture references that go with this study if people want to do that on their own. And I put a whole bunch of videos here on understanding the Day of Atonement, and different stuff about the Azazel goat and Enoch, and of course my materials and stuff talking about that, and Caesarea Philippi and what Yeshua was doing there. And if you keep scrolling down, I've got Day of Atonement videos about that from Lex Meyer, from Jim Staley, and 119 Ministries, so people can check those out. Traditionally, it's understood that it is the Great Fast, and certainly especially if you're not used to fasting, it is definitely a way of afflicting your soul, where your body's like, feed me, I need food, and you're saying no. Like you're bringing your flesh into submission, and I don't know about other people, but like I need to eat quite a bit, otherwise I get shaky and I have other physical issues and stuff like that. So typically it's just, for me, it's a time of rest, and well, the Day of Atonement is a day of rest. It's a Shabbat, but it's a sobering one, and I think especially in this season that we're in worldwide, but certainly here in America also. This is a good season for all of us, so I'm calling on everybody in the Virtual House Church. If you're listening to this live today or watching it in the archive tomorrow, Sunday the 27th, or Monday, which is the Day of Atonement on the calendar that we're keeping, that we're going to be doing, I'm just going to call a corporate fast for everybody to be in prayer. First of all, for yourselves, to get alone, to try to experience the things that we're talking about here, seeking the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. But also to intercede. Day of Atonement, when we think of Day of Atonement, that has the connotation of a judgment. And I was reminded of that when I was in the nature preserve yesterday, that there was, I don't remember what day it was that I was doing it last time, several months back, but I was crying out, like, with all the stuff that's going on in the world and the pedophilia and all this, everything, the garbage that's happening everywhere. I was like, Father, how long are you going to let this go on? Like judge the wicked and rescue the innocent, set the captives free. Like I was crying out to God and frustrated, like, how long, And as I was going through the woods, I was way out and just following this skinny little path that I was on, and I come around the corner, and there was something on somebody had tacked onto the tree. It was a sign that says, "Judgment Day is coming." Like, just as I turned around the corner, I'm like, what? And apparently that was as I got closer and read the sign, under in the fine print, that was the title of a mountain biking competition, called Judgment Day. But the timing of me seeing that sign on the tree as I was, in prayer, desperate, like crying out for judgment on what's happening, it said Judgment Day was coming. Now, this was several months back. We've got a chance, for those of you who are about to go in, you already did it, but for others that are going into the Day of Atonement, to be praying. Judgment is coming one way or another. And this country, America, certainly, United States, certainly has a lot to answer for. And is going to be judged, in my opinion. And probably already is being judged. But, my whole thing is like, Father, will you judge the innocent with the guilty also? And whenever I pray that way, he's like, look, you're the one that assigns value to sin. You think lying is not as bad as murder, but sin is sin, right? So then I have to correct my prayer, like, okay, yes, we all have our sins that we are guilty of, but there's sins that are only applicable in our own life, that are internal, and there are sins that are external that affect others. And that's where I'm like, Father, where there are people who are innocent, who are being harmed by people who are guilty, like, are you going to bring judgment on them? And is the innocent going to be judged with the guilty? I don't know. The answer to these prayers is like, these are things that I'm seeking him for. Especially if I'm in the nation that's about to be judged. It's like, I want to claim that my Goshen is wherever God has me, right? Who has me at this moment here. But anyway, this is an opportunity we have to use this platform to just say, hey, listen, everybody, let's just do a corporate fast. Pray for our own lives and families, but also our nations and the world in this season, because we're in a very difficult season. Now, on the personal side of things, I find it interesting that this week's Torah portion, the half Torah portion, talks about David and his testimony, and the New Testament portion is probably the favorite. My favorite part of the entire Bible is this portion right here, is John 20 through 21, the end of the Gospel of John. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and
let's just check it.
Just going to read it. It's apparently defaulted to the New Living Translation, and that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and read from that because I'm not a King James only type. But
I don't use King James,
Well, my study Bible actually has King James on the left and New Living on the right, so I really enjoy the comparison of the two. But this one's a whole lot easier to read. So
yeah, that's true.
8 days later, so this is after Yeshua had been crucified and rose from the dead, the disciples were together again. And this is two interesting stories because Thomas doubted, right? Doubting Thomas. He heard the testimony that Yeshua had appeared to others, and he's like, you know what, guys? I'll believe it when I can physically touch him, put my hands in the holes. So everybody gives Thomas a bad rap, but you know what? I'm kind of with him on some of these things, Like, I need to see, hear, feel, taste, touch myself, especially these days. I know I can't trust what my eyes see on the news, for instance. I know how it can be manipulated. I know how sound bites can be manipulated and edited. And it's like, look, I need to see it and feel it, taste it, touch it. I need it for myself. So I can appreciate Thomas right here. But what I love about this passage that we're going to read, because it deals with two people, that Thomas, doubting Thomas, not believing, and Peter's failure. Earlier Peter's like, I'll go with you anywhere. He's ready to take up the sword and die for him. And then
Sure.
A little girl calls him out at a fireplace. All right, aren't you one of them? And 3 times he denies that he even knows him. And so I can identify with Peter. When I read that story, there's just something in me that like, I'm like, I get you, dude. I get, he has all this zeal, all this passion, and he means well, and then when he's tested, he fails miserably, and so I have to believe that Peter was present at this time, because he knows that and when the angel appeared to Mary, he says, go and tell the others, and he specifically says, or not the angel, when Yeshua appears to Mary, he says, go and tell the others, and he specifically says, and tell Peter that I'm risen. So, like, yeah, he could have just said, just tell the others, and Peter's included, but he specifically says, tell Peter, because after he betrayed the Lord 3 times, it says he went out and wept bitterly. Like, I get you, dude. Like, you can have all the best intent in the world to serve him with all your might, and then you screw up, and you're like, how can he ever use me, And so, Peter's weeping bitterly that he had betrayed the Lord. And you got to know that this guy just wanted to, like, I give up. I quit. He says, I'm going to be the rock, whatever. I'm done. And so when we get to this part here, and Thomas, he's having his time of doubt. 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. Peace be with you, he said. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here and look at my hands. Put your hand into the wound in my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe. And we don't see any indication that he did it, that he actually put his fingers there. Yeah. He just fell on his face, and he's like, my Lord and my God, Thomas exclaimed. And I think this is interesting. My Lord and my God. Jesus didn't correct him. Yeah. He didn't correct him here. That's interesting. Then Jesus told him, you believe because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me. The disciples saw Jesus do many other miraculous signs in addition to the ones recorded in this book. But these are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him you will have life by the power of his name. Now, King James, I think, here says that I suppose the whole world couldn't contain all the books that should be written.
Exactly.
If he did so many miracles that he's like, I don't think all the books in the world could tell everything, but he's like, I'm telling you these things so that you may believe. Then
actually, it's in the same book, Rob, in the chapter 21. It's the last verse.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was at this verse right here. Okay, cool. So then we have this situation right here. Later, Jesus appeared again to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. This is how it happened. Several of the disciples were there. Simon Peter, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples. Simon Peter said, I'm going fishing. Like, at this point, that's what he did before he met Yeshua. And Yeshua's like, I'll make you fishers of men. At this point, I think Peter's like, he's not going to do anything with me anymore. I'm going back to what I know. He's like, I'm going fishing. We'll come too, they said. So they went out in the boat, but they caught nothing all night. At dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. He called out to them, Fellows, have you caught any fish? No, they replied. Then he said, Throw your net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you'll get some. So they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. And that's where Peter, John, I believe John is the disciple who Jesus loved right here. Then the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, It's the Lord. And at that point, he was like, I can't stand it anymore. I can't take it anymore. He's like, I'm going to go back to my old life. He didn't catch anything. And then the one that called him from that old life said, yeah, throw some on the other side. And he's there like, yeah, whatever. They throw it on the other side. And they get so many fish, like they can't even handle it. And John's like, it's the Lord. Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord. He put on his tunic, for he had stripped for work, jumped into the water, and headed to shore. The others stayed with the boat and pulled the loaded net to the shore, for they were only about 100 yards from shore. When they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them, fish cooking over a charcoal fire, and some bread. Bring some of the fish you've caught, Jesus said. So Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net to the shore. There were 153 large fish, and yet the net hadn't torn. And that's a whole study on itself right there, the 153 large fish. Now come and have some breakfast, Jesus said. None of the disciples dared to ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. This was the 3rd time Jesus had appeared to the disciples since he had been raised from the dead. So we had Peter denying the Lord 3 times. And now this is the 3rd time he's encountering him. And it says, after breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied. You know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said. You know I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. A 3rd time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a 3rd time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. This, in every English translation, we're missing it. This was back in that season we're talking about where we had dreams and stuff, that the word was opening up to me like never before, getting constant deep revelation. And it was in that season I read the story again, and I'm getting Peter, I'm with you, dude, I'm with you. And I felt like who was saying, you need to look into the story because you don't understand what's being said here. And I'm like, well, it seems pretty plain to me. Well, it's not in English. If you look it up in Greek, Yeshua asked him the first time, Peter, do you agape me? In Greek. That's like unconditional love. And Peter responds with, I phileo you, which is, I love you like a friend. 2nd time, Peter, do you love me unconditionally? You know I love you like a friend. 3rd time, Yeshua says, Peter, all right, do you love me as a friend? And it says it grieved Peter the 3rd time. Not that he asked him that you loved him. It grieved Peter the 3rd time because Peter couldn't get to agape. He's being brutally honest with himself. He knew, he spoke like, I'm your guy before, and then, he denies him in front of a little girl at a campfire, right? He's just being honest. He's like, you know what, Father, Yeshua, he's asking him, do you love me unconditionally? He's like, I love you like a friend. That happens twice. And then the 3rd time, Yeshua says, okay, fine. Yeah. Peter, do you love me as a friend? And he's like, you know what? It grieved Peter that he couldn't get to agape and that his master had to go from agape down to phileo. So what it says to me, though, is that Yeshua is like, okay, this is what I have to work with. that's what I'm going to do then. Like, he's willing to meet us where we're at. That's what it said to me. Peter couldn't get from phileo to agape, so Yeshua went from agape to phileo. And he's like, okay, I'll build you up from there, you know. And he's here's the good shepherd effectively handing his shepherd's staff over to Peter in this dialogue here, you know. And he's like, you're not going back to fishing, bro. You know, this 153 fish thing, that's important. You're going to be fishers of men, you know. And then you continue with the story, and he says, I tell you the truth. When you were young, you were able to do as you liked. You dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted to go. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will dress you and take you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to let him know by what kind of death he would glorify God. Then Jesus said, follow me. So, I mean, he's telling him, you're going to be crucified, dude. There. Which later happened. And Peter turned around. Peter turned around and saw behind him the disciple Jesus loved, the one who had leaned over to Jesus during supper and asked, Lord, who will betray you? That's interesting too, because this is the redemption of the betrayal that Peter did, you know.
Yeah.
And John's talking about the betrayal of Judas. Who will betray you? Peter asked Jesus, well, what about him? What about him, Lord? Jesus replied, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? As for you, follow me. So the rumor spread among the community of believers that this disciple wouldn't die. But that isn't what Jesus said at all. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? This disciple is the one who testifies to these events and has recorded them here. And we know that his account of these things is accurate. Here's that verse. Jesus also did many other things. If they were all written down, I suppose the whole world could not contain the books that would be written. That's pretty awesome. I just, that story speaks to me on so many levels, because you have the doubt that I certainly struggle with a lot, you know, the struggle between faith and doubt. You have that being addressed with Thomas. And you have the betrayal, where you mean well, you want to do well, but you keep falling down. And 3 times Peter fell, you know, in his betrayal. The 3rd time Yeshua meets with him, asks him 3 times, do you love me, in different ways. But the fact that Yeshua is willing to come and meet Peter where he was, to build him up, to give him the shepherd's staff to take over after he left, man, that's... I love this pairing of scripture.
That's powerful, Rob.
Yeah.
No, it's powerful, you know, because you know, and actually, let me share something that came to my mind yesterday when I was praying. You know that I was keeping Yom Kippur yesterday. So Yom Kippur is so significant that because it's the forgiveness, not for an individual, it's the forgiveness of the people. Mm-hmm. Because it's the process for the forgiveness in Yom Kippur, the sacrifice for the Kohanim, the priest, and also for the people of Yahuwah. So that's what it's all about Yom Kippur. And and it is interesting you bring this topic about Thomas to the discussion, because it was part of my prayer yesterday. Is that you know, we always read the stories and in the scripture how Yahuwah with a strong hand brought out from Egypt Israel with all these big miracles, and you know, all that generation, the first generation, has a so amazing privilege to see all this with their own eyes, to hear the voice of Yahuwah with their own ears in Mount Sinai. That all the later generations, including us, we have not had that privilege to hear and to see things. And you know, when I was praying this yesterday, it came this thought to my mind, is that we are living on the end times. It was the desire of Yahuwah that all of us, we are going to experience this time, that we are living on this time of the history of humankind. And what it came to my mind is that similarly to what happened to Thomas, that he needed to see. We don't need to see it, but sometimes doubts are coming to our hearts and so on. And sometimes we are acting like Thomas. But even in the same way that Thomas was able to see Yahushua resurrected and with his wounds, we are going to be able to see as well, in the same way that the first generation saw all these miracles happen. It's in our times that we will also see with our eyes, and also we are going to hear with our ears the marvelous signs and the work of Yahuwah. So it's so amazing when we think things like that the Yahuwah is unfolding His word in front of our eyes, and we are being direct witnesses of what's going on, and we are going to be even more direct witnesses of everything He's going to do with this second great Exodus. That this parallel with Thomas is so amazing. And just to complete my comment here is that looking at the story of Kepha Peter that you were sharing, just connected to everything that we have been sharing in this podcast is so in harmony, because it's exactly what Yahuwah is looking for us. Is in the words of Yahushua, that we need to love Him with all our heart. And we know what happened with Peter. And something interesting that happened also this morning when I was there reading the story of Abraham when he was a kid, and he was more an adult actually. In the book of Joelin, it says that he went to the house of the idols and he burned the idols, all of them, with fire. And it was his brother Haram that he went into the house in order to save the idols, and he died. And we were discussing this morning that how bad Abraham most probably felt within himself, because he tried to destroy the idols, and because of that his brother died. So it echoed me the words of what you said about Peter. Peter most probably went through exactly the same feeling. We are emotional beings, so his feelings were so harsh on him after he denied the master, that the whole story that you are sharing now, Rob, is so interesting, because I just can feel Peter feeling these harsh feelings in his heart because of what he did, and now Yahushua asking him in case he was loving him. And the same question that Yahushua made to Peter is the same question that he's doing for us now, if we are loving him. And we know that what does it mean love him is to follow his step. What does it mean to love Yahuwah is to do his commandment. All of this is connected. That is what we need to remember, and I think is the main message. I didn't prepare this actually, Rob, for today, and most probably you didn't do it as well either.
No.
But what I hear from the Ruach is that this is the main message of the broadcast, is that we need to seek Yahuwah with all our heart. That we know we need to love Him with all our strength, especially in the times that we are living, in the same way that Yahushua was asking Peter to love him.
Yeah, I'm showing people on the screen where they can go look it up, the agape versus phileo issue on each one of those. Our goal is to get to the agape. So he asks some phileo there, and then he says phileus there, different variations of the same thing. But well, like you said, didn't plan the direction that today's broadcast went, but this is what it's like to be led by the Spirit. It's like, somebody out there may have needed the testimony,
most probably.
And I think, even as you said, you didn't feel like coming on today, but hopefully this ministered to you. I often find myself preaching to myself. It's funny how he works that way. There's something called the Socratic method. I think it was Socrates that coined the whole idea is, rather than telling you the answer, I'm going to ask you questions that will get you to answer your own question.
Correct.
And I've got a friend of mine who's a mentor to me, and he does that to me all the time. Like, whenever I've got an issue and I need a brother to talk to or something like that, he will ask me the right questions to get me to give the answer that I would have otherwise been seeking from him. Like, oh, you did it again. And his whole thing was, Pat's his name. He's like, you know what? I can tell you something, but that's just my opinion. When you say it, that becomes your truth. So if I can get you to say for yourself what I would otherwise say to you, you can't write it off as opinion because now it's your truth. And I think they call it the Socratic method, but it's probably the Yahuwah method, because how many times does he do the same thing, right? He answers a question with a question, hopefully.
No, for sure, Rob. Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but yes, that's my experience as well. Sometimes through the words that he put in our mouth, he's speaking first to us. Mm-hmm. So as I said, I had this heaviness at the beginning. I don't have it anymore. So that's the way he do things.
Yeah, right on. Well, some people in the chat room were asking about the 153. I'll post it again, but there was a. Let me see here. There was a if you just go on YouTube and do a search for 153, you'll let me switch over here, second monitor. I haven't watched all these videos here. There's a video that I did on my channel that I posted too, but it's an interesting study, the whole 153. So if you just go on YouTube and type in 153, you can find the teachings that you see on the screen here and see what they have to say. But I also posted one that I did on my channel a while back. Stuff for people to check out. Also, as we're winding down this broadcast here, people can join the Virtual House Church server. And let me I'll post a link in the chat room for people on that. There have apparently been some requests for me to create some new channels within the server, so I will take a look at those requests and maybe do that as well. But there's a link just posted in the chat room for you. It's good for 24 hours, so you can join the discussion there. We still need to do the competition on the logo thing, so maybe next week, if I can make sure that everybody's going to be with us here, because I need you and Kevin and Jake also. So if we can have everybody here next week, are you available next week?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, cool.
That would be nice, actually, that we can close it before we start the new cycle.
Yeah, that'd be great. We can kick off. That's a good idea. Kick off the new cycle with the new logo. So there are some new ones. It looks like some people have done there. So if you're interested you got another week let me say till Wednesday. So what's today's date? Today is the 26th. So you have until the 30th. So the end of this month, September 30th, to submit, and then I will consider that closed, the competition closed. And this will give me time a couple of days before we do this to take all the logos and put them all up on one web page. And maybe I'll have to look into a plug-in or something for polling, a way for people to make their selection.
Oh, yeah.
I'll have to figure out an easy way to do that. Right now I can't think of anything at the top of my head, but so if we can narrow it down, maybe with everybody voting for, let's say, the top 5, and then
that would be nice, actually. You can do that.
Yeah, if we can get the audience to narrow down the top 5 or so, then we can go okay and look at those and then choose the winner there. So if you're interested, you can join the Virtual House Church server there. Look in the menu here for the logo competition. Submit any ideas you have by the 30th of this month, and we will take a look at that. Any other parting thoughts, Juan Carlos, before we end today?
Yes. Just 2 things to finish from my side today, Rob, is just an invitation for those that are still not keeping Yom HaKippurim. Is that through the feast is to read the book of Daniel, chapter 9. This is one of my more favorite places in the scripture, because there is so amazing the prayer of Daniel in chapter 9 that is specifically for the time that we are living. So my invitation is that for everybody to read the chapter 9 of Daniel and to hold those words in your hearts. It's like you are praying to Yahuwah with the same words. I think this is so amazing. And in the same thing, I was sharing before in the chat, a song that I like very much, and I will share it again, that somehow is written based on the words of this chapter 9. It's a song in Hebrew, and every time that I hear this one, it touched my heart. I was singing on this song yesterday during my keeping of Yom HaKippurim. So I was going to recommend everybody to check this song. I believe it's going to bless you in the same way that it has been blessing me. So that's for today from my side. Rob, thank you for inviting me again. It's always a blessing, a verajá, to be in the Virtual House Church.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, man. I'm going to post that song. You sent it to me in chat here.
Yes.
Copy link.
I put it in the chat as well.
You did?
Everybody.
Okay.
Yes.
I will post it again for people to check out that song. And actually, we got a couple minutes here before top of the hour. So, tell you what, I will go ahead and read Daniel chapter 9. So, maybe we can end with that. Daniel chapter 9.
Yeah, that's an amazing chapter.
Yeah, right on. Well, we have time to do it. So, Daniel's prayer for his people. It was the first year of the reign of Darius the Mede, the son of Ahasuerus, who became king of the Babylonians. During the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, learned from reading the word of Yahuwah, as revealed to Jeremiah the prophet, that Jerusalem must lie desolate for 70 years. So I turned to Yahuwah Elohim and pleaded with him in prayer and fasting. I also wore rough burlap and sprinkled myself with ashes. So that's, what do they call that? When they don't use burlap. What is it? And ashes.
Which one?
In other translations, it says they cover sackcloth. Sackcloth
yes.
and ashes. So New Living uses burlap here, sackcloth and ashes. I prayed to Yahuwah my Elohim and confessed, O Yahuwah, you are a great and awesome Elohim. You always fulfill your covenant and keep your promises of unfailing love to those who love you and obey your commands. But we have sinned and done wrong. We have rebelled against you and scorned your commandments and regulations. We have refused to listen to your servants, the prophets, who spoke on your authority to our kings and princes and ancestors, to all the people of the land. Yahuwah, you are in the right, but as you see, our faces are covered with shame. This is true of all of us, including the people of Judah and Jerusalem and all Israel, scattered near and far, wherever you have driven us because of our disloyalty to you. O Yahuwah, we and our kings, princes, and ancestors are covered with shame because we have sinned against you. But Yahuwah our Elohim is merciful and forgiving, even though we have rebelled against him. We have not obeyed Yahuwah our Elohim, for we have not followed the instructions he gave us through his servants, the prophets. All Israel has disobeyed your instruction and turned away, refusing to listen to your voice. So now, the solemn curses and judgments written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, have been poured down on us because of our sin. You have kept your word and done to us and our rulers exactly as you warned. Never has there been such a disaster as happened in Jerusalem. Every curse written against us in the law of Moses has come true. Yet we have refused to seek mercy from Yahuwah our Elohim by turning from our sins and recognizing his truth. Therefore, Yahuwah has brought upon us the disaster he prepared. Yahuwah our Elohim was right to do all of these things, for we did not obey him. O Yahuwah our Elohim, you brought lasting honor to your name by rescuing your people from Egypt in a great display of power. But we have sinned and are full of wickedness. In view of all your faithful mercies, Yahuwah, please turn your furious anger away from your city Jerusalem, your holy mountain. All the neighboring nations mock Jerusalem and your people because of our sins and the sins of our ancestors. O Elohim, hear your servant's prayer. Listen as I plead. For your own sake, Yahuwah smile again on your desolate sanctuary. O my Elohim, lean down and listen to me. Open your eyes and see our despair. See how your city, the city that bears your name, lies in ruins. We make this plea, not because we deserve help, but because of your mercy. O Yahuwah, hear. O Yahuwah, forgive. O Yahuwah, listen and act. For your own sake, do not delay, O my Elohim, for your people and your city bear your name. I went on praying and confessing. Yeah, that's the prayer right there. Then, right after that prayer, this is how he answers prayer. So, in like manner, as we were saying before, we have this opportunity with Day of Atonement and this weekend to pray this type of prayer for our nations. Everybody that's listening to this, I mean, pretty much the whole world's up in turmoil right now, so everybody can be praying the same prayer. That's the prayer to pray. And this was his answer when he was praying that. So I'd be maybe excited to hear what the answers we have that we hear back, for next week. But this was the answer to his prayer. I went on praying and confessing my sin and the sins of my people, pleading with Yahuwah my Elohim for Jerusalem, his holy mountain. As I was praying, Gabriel, whom I had seen in the earlier vision, came swiftly to me at the time of the evening sacrifice. He explained to me, Daniel, I have come here to give you insight and understanding. The moment you began praying, a command was given, and now I am here to tell you what it was. For you are very precious to Elohim. Listen carefully so that you can understand the meaning of your vision. A period of 70 sets of 7 has been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish their rebellion, to put an end to their sin, to atone for their guilt, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to confirm the prophetic vision, and to anoint the most holy place. Now listen and understand. 70 sets of 7 plus 62 sets of 7 will pass from the time the command is given to rebuild Jerusalem until a ruler, the anointed one, comes. Jerusalem will be rebuilt with streets and strong defenses despite the perilous time. For those who doubt Yeshua, this is the prophecy right here. From the weeks that are given from the time that Daniel is given this, when you count forward in time from that point, it lands in the time of Yeshua. So for those who want to deny Yeshua, well, you're going to have to throw out Daniel because this prophecy is of the Messiah, the anointed one, that would come precisely on the time given here. So after this period of 62 sets of 7, the Messiah, the anointed one, will be killed. Oh, interesting. That's when Yeshua was killed. Again, you're going to have to throw out the book of Daniel. If you claim to be an Old Testament type that wants to throw out Yeshua, don't believe Yeshua is the Messiah. Sorry, Daniel. Daniel gives you numbers, actual physical countdown. He will be killed, appearing to have accomplished nothing. And a ruler will arise whose armies will destroy the city and the temple. Well, that happened in 70 A.D. The end will come with a flood, and war and its miseries are decreed from that time to the very end. The ruler will make a treaty with the people for a period of 1 set of 7, but after half this time he will put an end to the sacrifices and offerings. And as a climax to all his terrible deeds, he will set up a sacrilegious object, the abomination of desolation, that causes desecration, until the fate decreed for this defiler is finally poured out on him. That's a bigger topic for another day.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
70 weeks of Daniel. I'll just ask you, maybe just as a teaser for maybe future discussions, but historically in the futurist camp, especially in the preacher of rapture dispensationalist camp, they believe that the 70th week of Daniel is what we call the 7-year tribulation period. I do believe that there is going to be a 7-year tribulation period, but I don't necessarily believe that it's because of the 70th week of Daniel. When I read Revelation, I see that the 2 witnesses prophesy for 3.5 years, then they are killed when their testimony is done, and then the beast rules for another 3.5 years. So that's why I believe that there's a 7-year tribulation period. For me, it could be the 70th week of Daniel, but I don't need the 70th week of Daniel to believe in a 7-year tribulation period. I've been reading and studying some stuff recently that has led me to believe that the 70 weeks of Daniel may have totally been fulfilled by 70 AD. And I'm leaning more in that direction nowadays. That has historically not been my position. but I'm becoming of that opinion now. And just for my own sake, I'll ask you, what is your opinion on Daniel's 70th week? Is it yet to come, or was it already fulfilled?
That's interesting. I heard about that position, Rob. I haven't studied in deep by myself. I tend to believe, and I think I shared this in the past, that I do believe that the tribulation period is going to be 3.5 years. So the full interpretation that the Daniel 70 week is part of the 7-year tribulation period is not something that I rely on at this moment. Mm-hmm. I do believe that everything that is written in that revelation of Daniel is mainly related to Mashiach, mm-hmm. because in the way that it's written is about restoration and bringing righteousness mm-hmm. to the people of Yahuwah. And who is the one bringing righteousness to the people of Yahuwah is Yahushua. So it would be interesting. I will take a look on what you're saying. So far, I believe that it's nothing related, at least this prophecy of Daniel, to the 7-year tribulation period.
Yeah, it's one of those hotly contested passages for sure, and especially the way it's written. And I could be mistaken, but I believe this is written in Aramaic. And
yes.
Even looking at the King James, it's different from what I just read. I'd have to go
it's
look
different.
At it
That's why I remember a few years ago I saw a study from another brother that he was going word by word or line by line of the prophecy of Daniel, and I think he was explaining that how Yahushua was fulfilling each one of those lines. So he was in the same thought that this is not related at all with the 7-year tribulation period.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's something really interesting to study, especially what happened with Tyrus, the destroying of Jerusalem in the 70 AD, and so on. But what is important to know, that the Scripture works in patterns. The same thing about the abomination of desolation that happened with Antiochus Epiphanes. It will happen again. This is what Yahushua said.
Yeah.
And most probably, I heard also people talking about that during the 70 AD was a second fulfillment of the abomination of desolation.
That would be the second fulfillment of it. Yes, correct. And we actually talked about this in the 2017 Virtual House Church for this week's Torah portion, and how prophecy can, and many very often does, have multiple fulfillments, because we see this issue of the abomination of desolation in Daniel. But if you read 1 Maccabees chapter 4, which happened several hundred years, about 200 years or so before Christ, in 1 Maccabees chapter 4, when Antiochus Epiphanes came in there and set up the altar of Zeus and offered the pig in the temple and all that, they called it the abomination of desolation. And then you got Yeshua, several hundred years later, saying, and when you see the abomination of desolation prophesied by the prophet Daniel coming, then you need to head for the hills. And I believe that prophecy was indeed applicable to those that he was talking to that saw the events of 70 AD and took off for the hills. So then you would have the second fulfillment there. But yet there's also this pending abomination of desolation. I still believe. I am looking into the arguments of the historist argument, which is very bizarre, the preterist argument and the partial preterists. I'm looking into all that, and I do see a good reason to believe that there's multiple fulfillments, multiple time periods where these things were applicable. But
that's why.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's why we need to keep an eye on what's going on in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the key piece in the puzzle. Just to understand how things are unfolding before our eyes. Mm-hmm. So Jerusalem has been in the discussion for years, but especially in the last 5 years, has been the whole discussion. In the politicians and governments and so on. So we need to see what's going on with Jerusalem in the coming months and the coming years. It's really important, especially with all the peace agreements that's happening nowadays. What's going to happen with Jerusalem? It's my belief. I was sharing in my channel in the past, in the last days study that I shared over there, that Jerusalem is going to be the centerpiece of the Woman of the Beast. So we need to see how things are going to unfold in the coming months and years to understand this third fulfillment of the abomination of desolation.
Yeah. I could be wrong in this, and I'm looking at it again in the King James here, and I seem to remember looking at the Aramaic on this and listening to some teacher, a Hebrew guy, talking about the whole 70 weeks here. This is King James. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. So that would be with Cyrus, right?
Yes.
And Nehemiah and Ezra and all that, to rebuild Jerusalem. So when you hear that decree, start counting. Was it 489 years or something like that? I forget what the number is. 493, whatever. I can't do the math in my head.
Something like that.
Is that it? 400, whatever it is. 70 weeks of years. 70 weeks and 62 weeks. Whatever that comes out to, I forget. So it'll be from the time of the rebuilding of Jerusalem, that number 400 and change, to the Messiah. So again, everybody who wants to deny Yeshua, you got a problem with Daniel here. And after the 60, and this is why the Magi were ready at that time. I believe that when they saw the Revelation 12, 1 through 5 sign that is described in Revelation 12 about the woman with the stars at her head and the moon at her feet, they saw that. They were the Magi, I believe, of Daniel's school of biblical astrology, whatever you want to call it, the understanding of the Mazzaroth. Yeah. They knew that Daniel's timeline, and they looked up and they saw the sign in the heavens, and that's when they said, "Okay, let's follow it." This is the time, and I believe that the Magi that brought the gifts to Yeshua, I believe they brought the tremendous wealth of Daniel, because he served under, I think, 3 kings in Babylon, and accumulated.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he accumulated tremendous wealth there.
Yes.
That and he had the school that he put together there. I believe that the wealth that Daniel stored up while in Babylon was brought to the Messiah that was prophesied by Gabriel to him as a result of this prayer. Like, this was that fervent prayer that he prayed, the way that we've been talking about we need to be praying. And he says that the moment you start praying, that your answer was dispatched. I'm here to give it to you. And he's like, listen up, you guys are going to get to go back, and from the moment that the decree is made to rebuild Jerusalem in the temple, start counting, because Messiah is going to come. So Daniel didn't get to live long enough to see this, obviously, because this is 400 and plus years later, but he had that wisdom stored up, and he had all the wealth under 3 kings, I believe, stored up, that the kings then, or the Magi, brought to baby Yeshua at the fulfillment of this. And after 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off. So 60, that's what, 20 and 2. So I'm not sure what to make of that, what the symbolic is of this, or if this is 2 weeks of years. So that'd be what, 2 times 4, so that'd be 14. 22 and 14.
So 2 weeks of years is 14 years. So
you'd have 20 plus 14, right? So it'd be 34.
Yeah, but in the way that I understand this, Rob, is that is after this is talking in the last week, is the 70th week, because if you read in the 25, it's talking about 7 weeks and 62 weeks, so 69 weeks,
right?
Years.
So this
will pass until Messiah appears.
Right. But the line of thought that I've been recently looking into is all 70 of them being fulfilled in Yeshua. Yeah. So instead of pushing this into our day, this would be in his day. So if 60, a score is 20, right?
Yes.
So 60, that'd be 60. 60 plus 14, right? So 74. So 74 years, something like that. When we get in it, I'm not sure if I'm doing the math right, but anyway, Messiah being cut off would be his his execution, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come, so this is a bad guy here, the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Well, that could fit Titus, in 70 AD. And the end thereof of that event shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And if you read Josephus's account of 70 AD, it's quite horrific. And he shall, the question is the he. Who is the he?
Who is the he?
Is the antecedent the Messiah that should be cut off, or the prince that shall come? That's the question of the he. Shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. There was somebody that I was listening to, and forgive me, it's been a while since I looked at this, so I may get it wrong. But if I remember correctly, he was saying that the he here is referring to Messiah, confirming the covenant.
That's what I heard as well.
Confirming the covenant. I mean, see, we hear dispensationalist preacher rapture people will say that this is the Antichrist and he's going to make a 7-year peace treaty with Israel. Well, that's reading a lot into the text, because the text does not say that. So we have to understand that the 7-year pre-trib rapture doctrine that most of us heard, that comes from people like Hal Lindsey and others that I'll say they probably meant well and they were going with the understanding they had in their time, but I believe that they're wrong. So everybody's looking for, Trump just signed a peace treaty, the Abraham Accord and all this stuff, and Clinton back in the 90s did a 7-year, that was the Oslo Accords or something like that, I think, the 7-year peace treaty. Every time somebody signs a 7-year peace treaty, everybody's going, they're freaking out. I'm going, what if this has nothing to do with that? What if he's confirming the covenant that he said in other, like he said he's reading Jeremiah up here.
Yeah.
Right? Daniel said that he's reading the prophet Jeremiah. Where does it say that?
That's my current understanding as well, Rob. I think what is written in the he in this verse 27 is talking about Mashiach.
Yeah.
And the interesting part is that in the verse 26 it said that he's going to be cut off.
Yeah.
At the middle of the week, I think it said.
Yeah.
So that's why I believe, and that's the part is the difficult way to understand this 70th week, is that is somehow related to what I understand is the tribulation will be 3.5 years, because Yahushua, when he was born, was at the moment of the 79th week, when with the 70th week started to happen, to occur. And his ministry, no matter that some people believe that was 1 year, I believe this was around 3.5 years. So it's when he signed and sealed up the new covenant with his sacrifice. So what happened with the remaining 3.5 years of that week?
Yeah.
That's the part that will require more study.
Oh yeah, and again, it's something we definitely have to look at. But the context of 9 is that he was studying Jeremiah. Daniel was, which has led some people to believe that that's why when he's talking about he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, that in Jeremiah talks about I will make a new covenant with you, and I'll put my law in your heart and stuff. And so that comes as a result of Messiah being cut off. He confirms the covenant that Jeremiah is talking about here. And in the middle week, so he causes. So this is why I don't know if it needs to be applied to an end times context. I'm sure maybe it can. This could be one of those issues where we have dual fulfillment. But if you consider what Yeshua did on Golgotha, he put an end to the sacrifices. He was the last sacrifice, and he caused and the high priest, when he was questioning Yeshua, he rent his garment, which nullified his priesthood. And then when you read the book of Hebrews, chapters 4 through 8, we see that all the problems that with the Levitical priesthood. So, and the overspreading of abominations, we see that the Levitical priests were guilty of all kinds of things that were wrong. So that's why that whole thing had to be destroyed. The temple had to be destroyed in 70 AD. So, I think there's value in listening to the other. Any time we have disagreement, there's value in listening to the other side's point of view, right? And so that's what I've been doing, is looking at the partial preterist view. Partial preterists believe that most of the prophecies in the Bible were fulfilled in 70 AD, but there are still some that are yet to be fulfilled. And the question is, what was fulfilled in 70 AD and what has yet to be fulfilled, in my mind.
Actually, if you go to the verse 24, that's the secret, the mystery. Just understand the full prophecy, because it's talking about end of the transgression, seal up sins, cover crookedness, bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up vision and prophet, and anoint the most set apart.
That was all done.
Doing it for us is Yahushua, is the Messiah.
Yeah, he did all that. So,
yes.
This is always a great way to end a show, right, on a controversy. This is one of those controversial topics for sure, especially in the pre-rapture dispensationalist camp. But the more I look at the Daniel 9 passage there, I'm becoming more and more convinced that all of this was done by 70 AD, but certainly by the events of what happened with Yeshua, the Messiah, that was cut off, not for himself but for others. He wasn't killed for anything that he did. He was killed, for the sins of the world, and ultimately for the world. But he said, "I come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So he was paying the price for the adulterous bride that Jeremiah said was divorced. So, like, if people say, we shouldn't be talking about, pick a topic, right? Whatever the topic is, we should just be talking about the gospel. Most of the people saying that don't know what the gospel is. You have no clue. The gospel was preached in the time of Isaiah. 500 to 700 years, whatever it is, before Yeshua even showed up. It's you got to understand you got to understand Genesis 48. You got to understand Leviticus 26. Deuteronomy 24. You got to understand what's happening in Jeremiah 23, Jeremiah 3, Jeremiah 30, 31. Basically the whole book of Jeremiah, the whole book of Hosea, Ezekiel 20 through 37. If you don't understand what's going on in all the passages that I just mentioned, and how they're all connected, and how they're all linked together, and how Yeshua said, "I have only come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel," and then what Paul says in Romans chapter 7 through 11, if you don't understand all of that, you have no clue what the gospel is. You have to understand Ezekiel 4. You have to understand Ezekiel 4 and Leviticus 26, and I've written about all this stuff, by the way, for people who want to look into it. They could go to, let me put this up on the screen here for everybody.
In the meantime, Rob, actually, what is the gospel? What is the good news? I
Yeah.
mean, it's in the word of Yahushua. It's the good news of the kingdom of Yahuwah. So what is the kingdom of Yahuwah? The only way to understand what's the kingdom of Yahuwah is reading those passages.
Exactly. For a little taste of that, I didn't cover it in a lot of detail, but I did cover it, at some length here on this blog right here, on the Ephraim Awakening website. So Ephraim Awakening is the sort of the sister site to Virtual House Church. If you could go in the search window here or here and just search Ezekiel 4, or click on the link I'm putting in the chat room here. Give you guys a little homework to check out. But in the meantime, thank you, Juan Carlos. This was another awesome Virtual House Church session. Always a pleasure to do this with you. And
the lesson is for me, Rob.
Yeah, right on, man. It's so good.
And let me read something just to repeat the last words of the prayer of Daniel. Just not to end with the controversy, but let's end with the prayer of Daniel. It says the following in my version of the scripture, in the verse 19. O Yahuwah, hear. O Yahuwah, forgive. O Yahuwah, listen and act. Do not delay for your own sake, my Elohim, for your city and your people are called by your name. That needs to be our prayer in our season of time. It needs to be our prayer in these last days.
Amen. That's a good note to end on. And I would again point people to the Virtual House Church website and scroll down to where it says Yom Kippur. And I would encourage you to read all these scriptures and spend time on this page watching the videos and reading the notes that we have there in preparation for those of you who are keeping this calendar anyway, for doing it on Monday. All right, that's all we have for today. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We'll see you back